Welcome to Writing the Wrong Way, a podcast for readers who want something strange and exciting, and writers who need something new. If you want to support this podcast, please consider buying my new book, The National Gallery. I'm extremely proud of this book because it may be my best book, and it is certainly my most personal and heartfelt book. But just because I say it's heartfelt doesn't mean it isn't full of weirdness, like sonnets about Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and elegies for my dead iPhone. For a limited time, if you buy a copy of the National Gallery directly from me, I will sign it, and I will also send you a signed copy of my previous book, The Politics of Knives, for no additional cost. So you can order the book and get your free book with it at thenationalgallery.ca. That's thenationalgallery.ca. I'm also excited because it is my 10-year anniversary as an author. My first book, Ex Machina, was published in October 2009, and to celebrate, now that it is 2019, as I record this, I've made Ex Machina available as an ebook for the first time. It was never available as an ebook previously, and I'm giving that ebook away for free at jonathanball.com/freebook. So go to jonathanball.com/freebook, and you can sign up, get all my exciting news when it's exciting and new, and other free resources that I'll just send you as I create them, plus a free book. And again, you can go to thenationalgallery.ca if you want to find out more about my new book and get a free book as well when you order that. So two free books and a paid book available to you. In any case, let's get into the show. Before I dive into this episode, which is about literary communities and how to kind of, as a new author, reach out to or join or just participate in a literary community, I just want to offer a preface note because me and my friend Ryan Fitzpatrick are recording this podcast, and as soon as we were done recording, as soon as I hit stop, Ryan said, we just talked forever about all these ways to join a literary community, and I realized the second we were done that it's all well and good for us to say these things as like two white guys who, relatively speaking, have had pretty minimal risks and pretty positive experiences in terms of joining a literary community. And so I just want to acknowledge from the outset, because, Ryan and I kind of just realized as soon as we were done talking, we realized, most of what we said, it just isn't going to apply for people who maybe are, coming into things with a different background or even just into a different community. And so while I think there is some valuable advice here, and I think that a lot of it, still is good advice or still is relevant and, relatively significant and useful to you, I do want to just note that, again, me and Ryan are coming at it from a pretty privileged position, that we just kind of, it just kind of hit us in the head almost as we were just finishing up, what a privileged position maybe it is that we're coming into the discussion of a literary community and, finding a place in the literary community. It's just a very specific way that we're looking at it because of how things went for us. So it's not that this is bad advice or not relevant or useful advice, but it is, I think, very limited by our point of view. So I'm going to have to do a future podcast, I think, with somebody else who maybe has a bit of a more fuller or balanced or just another perspective on the same topic. So if you're that person, if you're somebody who, just has a different perspective on entering a literary community and maybe disagrees with some of the things that we're saying, or just, has a different point of view on it, feel free to let me know that you're interested in coming on the podcast. Otherwise, I will be kind of looking for another person to maybe talk about the same topic, but with that other point of view. So I just wanted to note that because Ryan and I just thought, as soon as we were done recording, we had to go do something else. And it just kind of occurred to us, it's all well and good for us to say some of these things, but we're kind of coming at it differently from, say, somebody who maybe has to think a bit more about, doing certain things. So that said, here is me and Ryan talking about how to kind of get into and participate in a literary community. I'm here with Ryan Fitzpatrick in the Ryan Fitzpatrick house. It sounds very elegant when I say it that way, isn't it? I like to add a penthouse to things, even if like I'm just in a park. Like this is the Wynwood Park, the Wynwood House. It just is like one of those weird literary things that people do, you know, like they call everything it's like this cottage that like Purdy, you know.
Oh, the Purdy. But that one even is like, I think it's the Al Purdy A-frame.
Yeah.
It's not even a cottage, it's the A-frame.
Yeah, is that the superior A+ level cottage? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the suggestion. I think it's like that's the architecture of the building.
It is, but if you say, I know, but
if you say it's the A frame, like A is like that's the grade you want in school.
that's the cottage you want to write.
That's the kind of meat you want to eat.
Yeah, it's the game you want to play. The AAA.
Yeah,
yeah. Anyway, we and Ryan we're sitting here in his place. I'm just trying to turn around Toronto a little bit. I'm about to head to Hamilton. Just turning for the National Gallery book, and staying with Ryan, who I know from our time in Calgary when we both lived there. You grew up in Calgary, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you moved. Ryan moved to Vancouver, and end up here in Toronto. And I want to talk to Ryan a little bit about something I get asked a lot by writers in my intro classes, particularly, which is this question of like, how do you connect to other writers? Like, how do you join a literary community? Like, what is a literary community, and so on?
Good question.
And Ryan was saying, like, yeah, it's a good question, but it is like a question that has like, on one hand, it has some very simple answers that are very practical and straightforward. On the other hand, it has like a weird, complicated non-answer, and is this interminable process that you're always doing or having done to you in a manner of speaking. But like, how did you get hooked into just, meeting other writers, back in the day when you started, writing and just getting interested in meeting other writers? What did you actually do? What
did I actually do? Okay. So like a lot of people, my entrance point was a creative writing class. For better or worse, like I don't want to say that that's the only entrance point, but it is an entrance point for a lot of people. Where if you get I also don't want to say right or wrong prof, but like a lot of profs will say you need to like poetry is a social thing, like it's a social art form. So you need to go and meet people. So I was very lucky to like work with Nicole Markotic and Fred Waugh, who both thought like it was important to go out in the community. So and if you're in a creative writing class, you have this group of people ready-made to you can say, hey, let's go to this reading together. So I started going to readings when I was doing that, and then eventually I barged my way into Filling Station by showing up at some meeting that Tom Muir asked me to go to. It's like a situation where there was just like an open meeting, and then there wasn't another meeting for like 4 months, which is very typical. And then like that's because it was behind the scenes wrangling, but that was like a whole different thing. This boom and bust cycle of Filling Station magazine, and the fact that it was constantly going out of business. I think it's settled down now, but who knows? Because I'm not in it.
Yeah.
The magazine still exists, so something's going right. And through that, like, I got involved in the magazine, and I met people through that, and I helped run a reading series, and like, really the answer is you just start going to things, and you meet people very slowly. And I think I don't know, we'll get into this, but it's easier if you're in a smaller place, because the radius isn't so like indomitable. I can't imagine being a young writer in Toronto and trying to like be involved in things. You just wouldn't like, you would either like limit yourself to a really small corner of it, or you would stop writing, like, because like community is like a different beast here. It was a different beast in Vancouver too.
Yeah. Well, for me, like I grew up in a really small town where there literally was nobody else, and like there were no writers around at all. There's no bookstore. There's no infrastructure of any sort for that kind of thing. I didn't even really know anyone else who was interested in writing.
Yeah.
Like, a couple friends who like, I don't know, like they like vaguely had a vague interest in it, but nobody like had a serious interest in it like I did,
Yeah.
Then when I moved to Winnipeg to go to university, it was a similar thing for a little while, like until I really started to get into, creative writing classes. I didn't really meet other people who were that interested in it, but at least then like could go to readings. Like I wasn't really super aware of them, and I didn't really understand. I think at the time, like you can just go to a book launch.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
you thought you had to be invited to a book launch.
Yeah, no, I did. Like I thought like, oh, this author's having a big party at the bookstore to celebrate their books. Well, if I'm not on the guest list, I can't go to But I don't know where I got that impression, but it was and then even when I started going to them, like. I don't have any of this anymore, but like, there was growing up in a small town and never knowing anybody even remotely related to any artistic industry. Like I still had that idea that, there's some sort of aura, a specialness around these people. I was nervous to talk to them. You know what I mean? I thought they were all geniuses.
I still have that. Like
for some people maybe, but not in general, right?
Well, no, like people are reading, so I don't know. Like I find since I moved here in Calgary, I found like it wasn't that because I kind of had my hand on the rudder of like whatever was going on a lot of the time. So I it was part of I was hosting the reading, so it was part of my job to like go, oh hey, like who are you? I'm Ryan. I run this thing. Thank you for coming. Like so, I had this kind of social way of operating, but like since moving to I found it a bit in Vancouver. And I find it even more here because, like, any room I walk into, it's a different set of people.
Sure.
Like, there's no consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find I go to the same reading series all the time because maybe I'll see the same people or someone I know will be there because they'll tell me about it.
I found
it's weird.
I found it was the thing that kind of got me over a lot of stuff when it sounds like you kind of did this to some degree too, but I just started trying to put myself in positions where it was like I was volunteering and it was my job now to talk to this person. Yeah. I had an excuse to do it. Or one thing I did was I started a big thing for me was this class that Dennis Cooley taught. So it wasn't a first year class, it was like a second year or something. You had to apply into it. But I remember distinctly it was a big class for my life in a couple ways, but one was the peer group in that class was phenomenal. Just for whatever reason, that class, I was in there with a guy named GMB Kamichik, who I still am friends with. I work in his studio sometimes, and he's become a full-time comic artist and graphic novelist, and does a lot of illustration and writing in different fields. He illustrated a book for David Robertson, and he's all over the place, just doing things. And Salima Nawaz was in that class, and I kind of got to become friends with her, and now she's in Montreal. She had a book selected for Canada Reads at one point. She won the Journey Prize, and everybody in that class kind of had was doing really interesting stuff and just kept doing things for the most part. Even years later, me and Gregory were walking through McNally Robinson one day after some book launch of somebody else in that class. And then we saw the retired woman who was taking it for on a lark. She put out a book, and I was sitting at McNally Robinson with signing her book. It was just a weirdly great peer group of people who just were really productive. But then the bigger thing was because it was Cooley, he would also have this open invitation for people to come meet him wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted, and he would tour other writers through. And I got to meet all sorts of other people that were in town or just passing through. Burke Sproxton, which probably most people don't know, but he did a really excellent book at one point on it was kind of quietly influential in the prairies. And
Yeah.
of course, David Arneson was a big figure there. And Robert Croach, would come by sometimes just to hang out,
Yeah.
And then the other thing that was really probably the most important part of that whole class was Gregory Kmichik, I mentioned. After the class was over, he was like, let's just keep doing this class, at my house. Come to my house every week at this same time. You're already free at this time. And so everyone just would kind of go to his house every week. It became a weird writing group, and that really, and then that started to pull in like other people from the communities. Like I found it was a really great, but like the class structure really bled into the peer group community. Yeah. But then the other thing that happened in that class was Cooley's final assignment. He made you create a chapbook. And so what I did was I was like, you had to make one for everybody in the class.
Yeah.
And that was like your final, assignment submission. And so I was like, well, if I'm already making like 30 of them or whatever, or 20 of them or whatever it was, I might as well make 50 of them.
Yeah.
And so I made a bunch of them, and I just started, and I was like, well, I'm a chapbook press. And I would go to, so then my like now in was, I was like, if I go to literary events and now I'm a chapbook publisher, maybe I can be approaching these people and saying, hey, I'd love to publish your chapbook.
Yeah.
And so now I was like all of a sudden a person like maybe somebody else might want to talk to because I could publish them. And that was like my kind of way around like the nervousness of approaching people. Like I'll just, try to like position myself as a person who like, can help this person.
Yeah. Well, my arc through it is like actually really similar to yours in a few ways. Like although it wasn't everybody in my second year creative writing class, although there was a couple people like
I remember it was like second year, but it was it was one of those not too far up then.
But like Nikki Reimer was in that class, Chris Ewart who may one day release a second novel. We can hope.
Miss Lamp is very underappreciated.
Yeah, Julia Williams was in that class who has a book a long time ago out of Coach House, who hopefully one day will release her second book.
The Sink House. Yeah.
Who else? Rebecca Faria, who I think is like doing spoken word in Halifax. And there were a bunch of other people who could have, like, for whatever reason, life kind of tugged them away from writing, and they could have gone on to do stuff, and maybe they still will. I don't know. I'm not in touch with them. It would be really great to see something from some of those people. And then like we didn't have the assignment. I think Fred tried to have us, or in a previous year he had done the same assignment that Cooley did with the class like a year ahead of us. So I remember the year-end reading, going to it, and like it was at like, do you remember that weird jazz bar that was in the Grain Exchange building in Calgary, like but near the, like it was in the same, almost in the same space as the Truck Gallery.
Kind of, yeah.
Like the Beatnik Cafe or something.
Yeah.
It was in the basement, but they had the year-end creative writing reading there, and everybody got up and read 2 minutes max, and if you went over, they would get the hook. Not literally, but figuratively. Like Fred would tell you to get off stage, I think, probably, or maybe Nicole, or maybe Aretha. One of them would be rude to you, but no one went over, so who knows? Because we were all scared of one of those people. But they had a piano up on the stage, and the piano was like covered with chapbooks. And so I know like the project that I did for Nicole's class, I made as a chapbook and made 50 copies, and I just handed it out to people. And then because I had done it once, like I went, oh, okay, maybe I'll do this for other people. And the same kind of deal. If I liked someone's work, I would go, hey, you should let me publish like that poem you just read as a thing. And I would go away, and I was living with my folks at that point, and my dad had bought a photocopier, so I was like running stuff off on my dad's shitty photocopier, and I would just make like leaflets, or I'd make like eventually it became full on chapbooks, and I would bring in like my friend Sandy Ewart, then Sandy Lamb, she changed her name when she got married. Would do covers, and like, but it became this whole social enterprise around publishing.
Yeah.
But that came out of like this thing I did in a class.
Yeah, like I found it really a great way to do things, because all of a sudden, like I had this when I did that. Well, I did the chapbook press. I did my own chapbook, but I was like, and it was great just to have a bunch of them. You know, like you give it to people and stuff, and it was like a fun little gift, and it was kind of like your little calling card in a way, but it was like just a fun little like project. But then the other side of it, was once I decided, I'll mostly use this press to publish other people. I all of a sudden then, it became a thing where, if I really liked somebody's stuff and thought that they were interesting, well, I had an excuse to talk to them. I had an excuse to continue a conversation and extend an interaction with them, and like meet them again, So it became like a whole way to just sort of like build a peer group, and like meet people who were, that I could learn things from. Like even today, like with this podcast, it's a sort of a similar venture. Yeah, it's like an excuse to talk to people, that I maybe wouldn't otherwise. Like I was the other day, I was interviewing Andrew Piper, and like I don't know Andrew Piper, like I've never met him, but he's like, if I've talked to him online a little bit, and it's like he's a friendly guy, but like a lot of times those people aren't as inaccessible as I think you think. But it helps to have an excuse to talk to them.
I think sometimes we just assume that we all are busy and have walls up around ourselves. So, like, we don't. Like, I do that, too, where I just, like, won't approach people because I'm like, well, I don't want to bother that person. Yeah. Or that person doesn't even know who I am. And, like,
I'll let you know if you're bothering
I'm 20 years. I'm 20 years and 2 books into this, whatever this career quotation marks around that word. And, like, I like it when people care about my shit, but I also feel that kind of nervousness and, like, hesitancy to, like, talk to people about their... It's a total contradiction.
Mm-hmm. I also just found, like, it was a thing where... Because I was doing a degree, like, on campus, it was... Yeah. Like, it'd be a weird thing that would lead to other things. Like, because I was doing this chapbook press, which is just like a little, literally like stapling books on my kitchen table kind of thing. Yeah. But because I was doing that, all of a sudden, like, I was like qualified to run like the university newspaper's literary supplements. Yeah. And I started a little mini magazine for the Arts Council, which still run like in a more complicated form. They actually, like, I founded the University of Manitoba's, student literary journal.
But it's because you did this small thing to, like, put yourself out.
That was because I wanted an office on campus because I was so exhausted. I wanted to be able to sleep on campus. So I applied for this. There's like the Arts Student Body Council is doing this, like, we want a newsletter. We're running a newsletter. We want, like, somebody to publish this newsletter. And I went into the interview and I was like, this is a stupid idea to have a newsletter. You should just cancel it. And he said you should give me money to make a literary journal. And they were like, oh, whatever, sure. And then I got my office. I could sleep in my office. I could stay. I would, like, if I had exams, I would just, like, stay on campus. But, like, weird, like, little things like that start to add up, Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like, people think you're... All of a sudden, I was like... I had a monopoly on literary publishing on campus. I was like, all the places that published anything, I was running them for some bizarre reason.
Well, if you're the guy in that small pond, then people in the other small ponds in Winnipeg start to notice and go, "Oh, John."
It was very odd, and it was funny, but it was very much like if I just started doing things, you know. And then you start meeting people because you're doing things, and I found it, for me, it was like, not that everyone has to start a chapbook press or take a creative writing class, but anything that you can do to just kind of like get over your own ideas, like your own roadblocks about like approaching these people, because they're usually quite approachable. Like once in a while you meet a real jerk, but like for the most part people are pretty approachable, I find.
Well, and like I think like one of the other ways that maybe like doesn't need like is way more low impact and doesn't need you to be attached to an institution. Mm-hmm. You don't need to like make yourself into a cultural impresario. Is if there's like any kind of regular reading series, just start going to it. And eventually, like if you go to it like a half dozen times, which I get is like that's a half year of labor, but like you get like 6, if it's every month, you get 6 nights of free entertainment. Let's put that in quotation marks because poetry is not as entertaining. But but hey, get out of the house. But people will start to like go, oh, who's this? I recognize you. You come the last few times, and people will introduce themselves to you.
Yeah. You know what's weird about the literary stuff too? I found, like, especially reading series, but anything like that, anything where, like, if you just keep showing up to a location, people will just start putting you in charge of it.
Yeah.
it's a weird thing in the literary world, because they're always scrambling for, like, people to help, or like somebody who wants to quit, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I used to go to, speaking of reading series, there's a reading series in Winnipeg called Speaking Crow, which is like basically it's an open mic night.
Yeah.
But then they'll have like one like more established person that they kind of like bring in. So I remember like, and this has been running for I don't know how long, but I remember going to it in the early days, like, and the girl I was dating at the time, we just kept going to this open mic night, and all of a sudden they just put her in charge of it. Like, hey, Euro's here, like, why don't you run this thing? And she's like, what?
But it's that like idea of like ongoing presence, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things when I was running Flywheel in Calgary, one of the things that I hated was when somebody would come to the come to the series for the first time, and they would kind of corner me, or let's be more generous. They would approach me and they would start talking to me, and within a couple minutes they were asking me how they could book themselves to read the reading series, and I went, no, that's not how it works. Like I choose people in the community. I try to be as wide-ranging about it, and I just go, why don't you just like come to the series some more times, and we can get a sense of who you are, and you be a part of the community, and like eventually, like you probably end up reading, because whether it's me or somebody else will say, hey, why don't you ask this person who we like, because they're around to read. Like, it's this weird thing, like, it sounds mercenary to say, go to a reading series and just show up every month. Like, and eventually people will recognize you. But it's just like, people want to be involved with other people who care about what they're doing. Like, and then, like...
Some places you can, like there are sometimes too reading series, like Speaking Crow was like an open mic, or you'd go, and if you wanted to read, you could sign up. If you didn't want to read, you just sit there. But yeah, even the ones that it seems more exclusive and closed off. Like, if you just are a presence there, like you say,
Well, like I also think I don't go to open mics anymore. I probably should, because like I could probably stand to hone my performance craft. But yeah, when I was starting out, I went to everything.
Yeah.
Like in Calgary it was possible to go to everything, because there'd only be like 2 or 3 readings a week. So like there's your social life taken care of. You're just going to these readings, and eventually you meet people, or you go with someone, they know somebody who's there, so you get introduced, and like you get a sense of the lay of the land and where you fit in the community, like where your stuff fits, and like you sign up for some open mics, and you learn, like, that's kind of trial by fire. You learn how to do a poetry reading, because nobody teaches you.
And you just learn the landscape too. Yeah. Like when I started showing up to places, I started to realize, like, oh, that person runs this magazine. That person, runs this other magazine. That's the person who runs the reading series. Like, because and you start to see the same faces, and you start to kind of get a sense of who they are. Even if you're not actually talking to that person, you kind of get the lay of the land a little bit, And I think it's less intimidating in some ways, especially like some people just don't have that. Like aren't intimidated in that way, but for me it was very intimidating initially, because I just had grown up in this small town and everything. But then like the more I went to I did start to, especially when you're young and you don't have like stuff to do. Like I just literally started going to everything, and I just got to know who people were. What about when you moved to Vancouver? Like when I moved to Calgary, I was, I knew Derek Beaulieu already, because I had met him at a conference, but I didn't really know him, but I had met him once. Yeah. And so I like emailed him and like said, hey, can I like, take you over for a beer, and like, you can tell me what to do and like where to go and what the reading series are and things like that. And what I found, and I did that to other people I didn't know. I just like found, like, I knew that they had books, and they were like, I had people's books that were also in Calgary.
Yeah.
So initially, I had a choice between going to Edmonton or Calgary, and I picked Calgary because when I looked at my bookshelf and there were more Calgary writers on it than Edmonton writers. That was like the only like reason I picked one versus the other. And then I just like I tried some of them. I found like they had websites, so I just emailed them like, hey, can I go take you out for coffee or a beer or something? Just ask you questions about like the literary scene. And like sometimes people don't like that, but I find like people are usually surprisingly responsive to like just a direct hey, can you tell me the answer to this question? Because like you say, like they're often they often don't get as much people contact them as you'd think.
Yeah. So
what'd you do when you went to Vancouver though?
Vancouver. Well,
you would have known some people already.
Yeah, and I had hooks because I went to Vancouver to do a PhD. Mm-hmm. So like I already had this kind of built-in workplace mechanism to kind of like place me like in certain kinds of readings or talks were more of a thing in Vancouver than they were in Calgary. So like academic talks, like big public academic talks, like just, I shouldn't say they didn't happen in Calgary, but they were so like few and far between. And
they're usually more like just in a room at the university.
Yeah. Or sometimes at the library. But Vancouver as a scene is like quite different than Calgary. Calgary, the scene is like really integrated. Where there are like kind of pockets. It's probably changed, so maybe I should couch this in like
we were there in 2000. I don't know. I was there 2005 2009. Yeah. I don't remember when you left.
Yeah. So in Calgary there were like different pockets. There was kind of like there was the university pocket where it would be like people who were actively in the program doing stuff, and they would intersect with people in the community who maybe did creative writing and maybe not. But even in the community there were kind of like weird pockets where there'd be the group around Filling Station, but also there'd be
spoken word group.
There'd be the spoken word group, which did connect with like stuff. Which in Vancouver, the spoken word group was like off on their own, doing their own thing.
Yeah, Winnipeg doesn't. Winnipeg's a weird place because, unlike other cities, the artistic disciplines are really interconnected. Like filmmakers know the writers, and they know the visual artists, and like I'm hanging out with these comic artists, and like. I find that's not really the case in other cities for some strange reason.
There's a bit of that in Vancouver.
Calgary had a little bit of it though, more than I expected.
Well, in Calgary, in Calgary, I found it was.
It would be like certain people would cross over.
Yeah, that's what would happen.
Like Sherry D. Wilson would like kind of cross between, like she would know people at like a certain reading series or whatever. But otherwise, like you had these little groups that had like visuals who would cross over.
Or you get hooks into the art community at different moments with different people. Like Derek was working at the New Gallery. And
Mark Hopkins was really bopping in between places.
Like, because he was pretty involved in the theater scene. And is. I think he's more involved in the theater scene now than he is in the literary scene. Is. But yeah, like when I landed in Vancouver, it was like I could leverage the mechanisms of the institution, but also I just started trying to go to things. And I found like certain pockets of the scene I fit better in because of the kind of work I was doing. Like, even though it wasn't completely at home, I felt more at home going to a KSW thing because the people there like had actually read my work.
Sure.
And even though I like a lot of the people in the kind of like post UBC MFA thing, like I never quite fit with them as a community. Even though, like, a lot of those people I'm really friendly with. I really like Daniel Zomparelli and Dina Del Bucchia and Kayla Zaga and then the kind of younger folks who were, like, I met them when they were working on Prism with, like, Curtis LeBlanc and Mallory Tater and Dominique Bernier-Cormier and who else?
Like
I'm going to feel really bad because one of these people, I'm going to blank on names and one of these people is going to listen to this podcast.
But one of the things you're saying though is like, there are like these little pockets around institutions or around like things like, around a magazine, around a reading series or whatever. And there's often crossover, but there is like, I think there's a sense in which, those things are like the hubs, right?
Yeah.
I find it's a little different. Like, I know for me, I find like it's different. It's more of a community for poetry than say for fiction writers. Like I find fiction. We were talking about this the other day, but fiction writers are a little more isolationist for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Not that they mean to be, but it just doesn't seem like there's not like a fiction reading series.
Yeah.
The way there's like a poetry series, like I just, for whatever reason, it just hasn't enabled itself in the same way.
Every once in a while you see someone try to get something going, but like it doesn't get critical mass. So like the best you can do is like a reading series that's just interested in writers. So we'll have both.
Yeah, you'll have these weird like lone wolves that come out of nowhere, but for the most part, like people are aware of what other people are doing because they, see them at things, whatever.
Yeah.
But although once in a while you'll just have like a weird person you've never heard of just pops out of nowhere and does something. But I find like it was just going to things just was really invaluable.
Yeah.
Because even if you don't, I mean, on one hand you kind of like connect into a community or like start to meet people. But on the other hand, you just get a sense of what people are doing.
Yeah.
Which is, can be influential in its own way. Like I found in Calgary, I was really, I've never really felt like I was doing the thing that other people around me were doing.
Yeah.
But I always like have felt like influence from it, like I've always like been excited about like the stuff these other people around me are doing.
Yeah.
And just the fact that people are doing things. Like what it seemed in Calgary, there was a time in Calgary where it seemed like it really felt like every week somebody was launching a book.
It was a real moment, like
and it was just exciting, And so it's like you go home and you're like, I want to work on my book, Like it was very. I found it very like because even if I didn't care about that book, it was exciting.
Because when everybody's launching a book, the question becomes like, "Oh, John, when's your book coming out?"
People would literally ask you that, like, "Hey, when are you gonna put out a book?"
I never get that question now.
Well, but when
or the other question would be like, what are you working on? What's your project?
Yeah,
what's your project?
And then you feel like you have to have a project.
Yeah,
like even if you don't, there's like almost like a weird. It's almost like a positive shame.
Yeah,
It's like I would just start making up projects like to answer the question, and then I'd start doing some of them because they were actually like not bad ideas.
Yeah,
but yeah, there is like but then you found it like difficult coming to Toronto. You don't feel it has the same energy just because. I
think it's
just more diffuse.
It's the size and it's more diffuse, and I'm sure there's pockets, and I just haven't seen them yet. Like I think there's. Like maybe an interesting energy coming out of like Knife Fork Book.
Yeah,
like,
I was just gonna say I just did a Knife Fork Book reading the other day, and it seemed like a really kind of exciting place.
But it seems like if we compare it to Calgary, it seems less of a community. Although there is a community around it, but it seems less of like a kind of diffuse, like everybody's kind of doing a bunch of things at once. Then it seems like the bookstore is an enterprise and it's attracting people. Like I really like Pivot. It seems like. But every time I go there, it's a different audience because the audience is coming with the readers rather than like, and that could be an effect of it's happening. It happens every 2 weeks, and there's so many reading series here. Like it's daunting. I haven't been to like 10% of the reading series in Toronto in a year because I can't go to like.
It's just a large city,
I'm not in my 20s and have lots of energy. So I can't go to 3 or 4 reading series a week when I have to truck across town, like because as you've learned, like I live way far east, and every literary thing in Toronto now is like west of Bathurst.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like an exciting city in certain ways and a daunting one in other ways, like you say. But like everywhere else, so you got like your pockets, right? Like here, I think. I don't know, like, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, like, it seems to me here that a lot of it is centered around publishers, because there's so many publishers here. But I think there's a lot of publishers, but they're not, like, as out in the community, in the same way, like, they're just kind of publishing things. And, like, you have a couple, but, like, whereas, like, Coach House has their big launch event.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I've ever seen an event like that in Winnipeg. But you have presses launching, like,
but we have,
books.
like, there's 2, 3, 4 of those. Like last fall, I went to like I think 4 or 5 because all the presses would have like a big kind of do at a thing, and the vibe would be slightly different, but it would be the same format where all the writers for the season get up and they read their 2 to 5 minutes. Yeah,
I've only ever seen that in Toronto. Like I'm sure they do it in other places, but I've never seen it.
Well, Talon does it in Vancouver.
Yeah,
but the other presses in Vancouver don't necessarily do it. Like New Star doesn't do it. I think Anvil has done it a little bit. Weirdly, I've never seen Arsenal Pulp do it. So you'd think like because there's such a big press.
Maybe they
right
do
now.
and we don't know about it.
Yeah, well, it's possible. But I never heard about stuff when I was there. But maybe that's an effect of the communities I was in.
Yeah, I don't even know what the value of it is exactly.
Yeah.
But it seems like
it's
very
a sense of closure, I think, and celebration.
Well, I don't know. It seems to me, regardless of anything else, it seems like there's just a bit more community around the presses.
Yeah.
In a way, maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like that, and it seems like I don't know. Like, it just seems like there's just a bit more. Maybe these little orbits.
Yeah.
Because
well,
just because you've got so many presses here, and then writers transiting here as well. Like they flew me in for the event, but like a lot of those people live here, right?
Yeah.
Just for whatever reason.
But that sense of community you got going to those readings is pretty dispersed. Like maybe you'll see some of those people at another event, maybe you won't. Like some of those people will only come into town for like a couple events, like sometimes you'll see like Stu Ross was at your reading, and
I missed him, but
and like he's a guy who lives out of town, right? So you won't see him at a lot of the little events, although he'll come into town, like if it's someone he knows, but like often you'll see him like come into town for a bigger thing, or if it works for his schedule, because I think he's in some days rather than others. But
but even just the travel time here seems like an issue. Like Winnipeg, everything's pretty close.
Yeah, so if you're
there's like the weather, like if if it's too cold to leave the house or not.
Well, Calgary was
like how far do you have to go?
Calgary was the same. So like there's all kinds of weird factors for how these things assemble. So I hope whatever young writers are listening to this like don't get daunted if they happen to live in a city that's like weirdly complicated for this stuff. Because I think the answer is just like go out and do stuff.
Yeah, you're
That's
probably right.
answer.
Regardless, like no matter what city you're in or what's going on around you, just like whatever is going on around you, just go to it.
Yeah.
Go to the closest thing that's there and just keep going to it.
Yeah.
And kind of branch out, as you're comfortable with. But and I think it also just helps to just get some excuse to talk to people. Like if you either just talk to people, but if you have like reservations about it, just manufacture some method around it. Whether it's starting your own reading series, or whatever, just volunteering at a thing.
I would say the hopeful answer, and I've seen a lot of people do this. Like if you don't see the community that you want to see, like if you've gone to everything and it's like you don't feel at home, you might have to make it. So I always think of like where some like reading series or publication would pop up in a really minor way, and then like suddenly like it's serving a community that nobody knew was there.
Well, that's kind of what Gregory did when that class is over. He invited everyone to his house to just keep coming every week. Like I really, in talking to him later, like I really got the sense that like part of the reason he did that was because he similarly like just felt disconnected from the literary community. Like he fancied himself a writer, but he was like, basically doing. He was a comic books guy. He used to own a comic book store. Then he closed that, and then he was drawing. But he really was primarily interested in writing at that time.
Yeah,
he had written like a massive 600-page novel that he then threw in the trash and all this stuff. But for him it was just kind of like he just brought the community to him. Yeah. He didn't know how to go to it exactly, so he just kind of invited it into his home in a really literal manner. And that's not going to work for everyone, but it is like I just, even now that I think about it, like my first professional publication sort of came out of going to things, because I was going to that Speaking Crow reading series, and I was reading stuff at it, and then an editor from CV2 magazine happened to be there and asked me to submit work to them, and that became my first like real publication. And it's like there is like there's just all these different ways in which just going to a thing is or creating a thing is, I think, really like integral and valuable. I think it's nice to create things too, just because then you're not just like, I don't know, then you're like contributing to the community. I think so much of like being part of a community is contributing to it.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to just like figuring out what you can take from it.
Yeah.
But like there's like a give and take, you know, but you know, you got to just kind of, I think, find ways to connect to that community and like deposit goodwill and whatnot into it.
Yeah.
Which can be tricky sometimes, but
yeah.
But you know, it really in some ways is as simple as like you show up and ask like, what can I do to help? You know, sometimes. Well, thanks for chatting. We should go get something to eat. I have to go to Hamilton here.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And any last words about the your dream community?
How much time you got?
No. But it is like I don't know. We didn't even get into like. There's so many things you could talk about, but
yeah,
it does in some ways just kind of boil down to leaving your house, which we should do right now.